Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Saparika Sri Sri Guru Gauranga Radha Sham Sundar Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribraj Jagacharya Vajyasto Tarasata Sri Srimad Jagat Guru Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribraj Jagacharya Vajyasto Tarasata Sri Srimad Kula Churamani Sarvashasya Siddhantavit Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Leela Bravishtam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajaka Acharya Vajyasto Tarasata Sri Srimad Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Leela Bravishtam Vishnupad Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Leela Bravishtam Vishnupad Sachidananda Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Abhirbhav Mahotsav Ki Jai. Jai Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupa Nuga Guru Bhargya Ki Jai. Jai Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Acharya Brinda Ki Jai. Jai Kol Kartel Ki Jai. Shri Harinama Sankirtan Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. So welcome everyone. Today we're broadcasting as every Sunday from our Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Math, East London chapter, 466 Green Street. And today is the very holy day of the appearance of Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Bhakti Vinod Thakur is the founder of the modern Krishna consciousness movement all around the world. And he appeared at the latter part of the 19th century and was considered, at that time India was under the rule of Great Britain, and part of the British Empire. In fact, Srila Govinda Maharaj often would joke saying, I'm British by birth, because when I was born, India was part of the British Empire. But so that was certainly the case in the time of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur was considered to be one of the Bengali intellectuals. They wanted, the British wanted to make a class of Indians that would be perfect Indian British gentlemen. That was their idea, and so they introduced the educational institutions in India, of which Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur was one, and he was, you can say, at least for some time, part of that Bengali elite, and growing up with the British education. And so there was one group at that time called the Brahma Samaj, or the Arya Samaj, and they wanted to find some, you know, like their idea was to take the best of British culture and tradition and mix that with the best of Indian religious thought and try to modernize that in their way. So they had great hope that Bhakti Vinod Thakur was going to be a great spokesman for that. But in his very famous Bhagavat speech that he gave, he distanced himself from that. And in there he announced, I have recently come in connection or in contact with the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and it has very much charmed my heart. So before that, the followers of Chaitanya Dev in India were not very well thought of. Since the time of Baladev Vidyabhushan, just after Baladev Vidyabhushan, then the sampradaya became almost obscure, and so many immoral practices were going on in the name of the followers of Chaitanya Dev, so that anyone who was had some culture, they would think of Chaitanya Dev's followers as some kind of degenerates. So they weren't given much credence in society because how they had corrupted the teachings. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur appeared in the time just to reform that and show that to the world. And so we can say that he is the founder of the Krishna consciousness movement in the modern day. And as Srila Guru Maharaj used to say often, that we are part of the Bhakti Vinod Paribar. So Paribar means like tradition or family, or like that. So the family of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And of course, Bhakti Vinod Thakur's own family was big, 14 children, 11 sons and 3 daughters. And as well as all of that, of course, he was a magistrate, which was quite a high position in the government at that time. And so he had quite a high position in the British government, and especially he was given charge of Jagannath Puri, and was commissioned to oversee the temple, the famous temple there, to make sure that there was no corruption or other things taking place there, which he did. And we find that in his own biography he tells like what was his schedule every day. So he worked full time as a magistrate, hearing cases in the court and so many things, and then after returning home in the evening he would take his supper and he would go to bed around 8 o'clock in the evening and sleep until midnight, and then at midnight he would rise and begin writing. And so many books he wrote. And so writing and composing songs. His songs, more or less all the songs that we sing are by Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Previously Narottam Thakur and something of Lochan Das Thakur, but until Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Mostly the songs that we sing now are from him. And so then he would take the name on his rosary till, like maybe 5 in the morning. From about midnight till 5 or 6 in the morning. Then he would take like an hour's sleep. And at 7 he would get up and take his breakfast, meet with anyone that had come to see him. And by 9 o'clock he was in the court. And that was his daily schedule. And so many volumes and volumes of books he wrote. He was highly learned. He could read and write in English, in Urdu, in Persian, in Arabic. Very learned, and he knew all of the great Western thinkers of the time. He was contemporaries of those that were known as the American Transcendentalists, like David Thoreau and Walt Whitman and others. And he was in correspondence with them. So many, you can say he was a reformer, a great reformer of his time. And so Srila Guru Maharaj, this is one of his books, Sharanagati, Surrender. And our Guru Maharaj wrote a commentary which is called the Lagu Chandrika Bhasya, which means the gentle moonlight commentary. And in his introduction, so we can find the introduction written by Guru Maharaj.
This book comes in a set, or is this one?
Just one. I can find this. Yes, here. Trying to find that. 41, I think it is. Yes, so this is a pranam mantra, which was composed by Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Maharaj, as the 9th verse of the Mangala Charanam. Guru Dam, Grantha Dam, Gora Dam Dam, Namadam Muda, Bhakti Dam, Bhuri Dam, Bande Bhakti Vinoda Kam Sada, Bhakti Vinoda Devena, Sharanagati Namika, Rachita Pushtika Kochit, Tasya Bashe, Fritod Yaman. I perpetually offer my obeisance unto Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur with great joy. Guru Dham, he is first and foremost the giver of Sri Guru, Bhagavan Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the inaugurator of the new era of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Grantha Dham, he is the author of numerous commentaries, treatises, articles, novels and songbooks, which represent the comprehensive and condensed essence of revealed truth. Gaura Dhamma Dham, he is the revealer of the abode of Sriman Mahaprabhu, which had become lost due to the course of time. Namadam, he is the giver of the name, the proper conception of the holy name. Bhakti Dham, he is the giver of pure devotion, and the proper conception of pure devotion in the line of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhu. Buridam, he is the bestower of an abundance of divine fortune, ultimately the service of Srimati Radharani. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur composed a short book entitled Sharanagati, upon which I have written a commentary. So, that's a very beautiful pranam mantra composed by Srila Guru Maharaj. But in the time of his Guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Guru Maharaj composed this. Sorry, wrong song here, but it is. Must be this one. Dvaita, where is it? Bhakti Vinod Viraha Dasakam it is called. If I can find it. This was composed by Srila Guru Maharaj. Thought I had that all lined up. Yeah, here it is, 282. So this song was composed by Guru Maharaj in the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srimad Bhakti Vinod Viraha Dasakam, which means prayers in separation of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. On hearing this, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, a very happy style he liked, very happy style. And then he said, it's 282. He said, who has composed this? And the devotee said, Sridhar Maharaj has composed this. And he said, no, Sridhar Maharaj has not composed it. Bhakti Vinod Thakur has composed it through him. And then he said, afterwards he said, so now, even if I leave this world, I am confident that there is one man left behind who can understand and properly represent what I came to give. And that is Sridhar Maharaj. So I'm going to read that and the translation. Ha ha Bhakti Vinod Thakur Guru Dvavim Shatish Tasama Dighad Dukha Bharada Shesha Virahad Dustikrita Buryam Jivanam Bahujanma Punya Nivaha Krishna Mahi Mandale Abir Bhava Kripam Chakara Cha Bhavan Shri Gaura Shakti Swayam. Alas, alas, O Bhakti Vinod Thakur, O Supreme Guru, for 22 years this world has been plunged into misfortune, long grief-stricken in your intolerable separation. You are the divine potency of Sri Gaura, and you graciously made your advent in this earthly plane, being attracted by the living being's virtuous deeds performed throughout many lifetimes. Dinoham chiraduskrite nahi bhavat padabja juli kana snanananda nidhim prapana shubhadam labdam samartha bhavan kintvadarja gunat tavati jashaha karunya shaktihi swayam Sri Gaura Mahaprabhu Prakatita Vishwam Saman Vagrahit. Since I am lowly and very wretched, it was not my luck to reach the ocean that bestows the fortune of surrender, the ocean of ecstasy in bathing in a particle of the dust of your holy lotus feet. Yet due to your magnanimous nature, you gave your grace to the whole universe, personally revealing your supreme eminence as the personification of the mercy potency of Sri Gauranga. That is, by coming into this world, I received his grace. Hey Deva Stabane Tavakila Gunanam Te Virinchadayo Deva Vyata Manorata Kim Uvayam Marchadhama Kormahe Etan no Vibhudhai Kadapi Atisya Lankara iti uchayatam. Shastresh eva naparayeham iti yad gatam mukundena tat. O Lord, even all the demigods headed by Lord Brahma feel frustrated by their inability to fittingly sing the glories of your divine qualities. What then can be said of the attempt of a fallen soul, a mere human like me? Surely the learned will never waste their eloquent words eulogizing this statement, since even the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna himself, has sung in the scriptures his celebrated confession, Naparayeham, I am unable to reciprocate your devotion. Dharmas charma gato gyataiva satata jogas cha bhogatmako jnane shunya gatir japena tapasa kyatir jigangsaiva cha dane dhambikata nuraga bhajane dustapacharo jara buddhim buddhimatam vibheda hi tada datra bhavan preshitaha. At the time when religion was evaluated in terms of bodily relationship, saintliness was determined by ignorance, and yoga practice was motivated by sensual pleasure. When scholarship was cultivated just for voidism, japa was conducted for the sake of fame, and penance was performed out of vindictiveness, when charity was given out of pride, and on the pretext of spontaneous devotion, the most gross sinful acts were perpetrated. And in all such anomalous situations, even the intelligentsia were at loggerheads with one another. At that very time, you were sent by the Almighty Creator. Vishvesmin kirana jata hima karaha sanjivayan osadhya nakshatrani cha rajanayam nija shuddham vistarayam rajate sach chastrani cha toshayam buddha ganam samudayang ste tata nunam bhumi tate shubhodaya iti hlado bahu sattvatam. This verse particularly, Saraswat Thakur appreciated. As the universally cooling moon is beautified by diffusing its nectarian rays, nourishing the plants and inciting the twinkling of the stars, your holy advent in this world is similarly ascertained as satisfying the pure devotional scriptures through profound study and blessing the learned with full-blown happiness by the perfect axiomatic conclusions descending in divine succession. With your appearance, the ecstasy of the devotees knows no bounds. Lokanam hitakamyaya bhagavato bhakti pracharas tvaya grantanam rachanai satam abhimatar nana bidhar darshitaha acharjai kritta purvameva kilatad ramanujadhyar buddhai preman bho nidhi vigrahasya bhavato mahatmya singha natat. By writing many books and by multifarious methods recognized by the pure devotees, you have demonstrated the preaching of pure devotional service unto the Supreme Lord for the benefit of the whole world. We have heard of similar achievements in previous times by stalwart scholars such as Sri Ramanuja and many other acharyas. But the glory of you, the very embodiment of the nectar of divine love, does not end and cannot be confined here. It means, Guru Maharaj said it means that his contribution even surpasses that of Ramanuja and other famous acharyas. Yad damna kalo dhamma chaiva nigame brahmeti sangyayate yasyang shasya kalaiva dukkha nikare jogeshvare nigyate vaikunte paramukta bringa charano narayano jaha swayam Tasyangsi Bhagavan Swayam Rasa Vapu Krishna Bhavan Tat Pradaha. Merely the effulgence of his divine abode has been designated by the title Brahman in the Vedas, and only the expansion of his expansion is sought after with great tribulation by the foremost yogis. The most exalted of the liberated souls shine resplendent as the bumblebees at his lotus feet. The primeval origin of even the original Sri Narayan, who is the Lord of the spiritual sky above Brahman. He is the original Supreme Lord, the personification of all nectarian mellows, Sri Krishna, and he is the one that you give. Sarva Chintaya Maye Paratpara Pure Goloka Brindavane Chil Lila Rasa Rangini Paribritta Saradika Shri Harehe Vatsalyadi Rashaischa Sevita Tanor Madhurja Seva Sukham Nityam Jatra Mudatano Tihi Bhavan Tadhama Seva Pradaha. Situated in the topmost region of the absolutely inconceivable spiritual sky is the holy abode of Sri Vrindavan Dham in the spiritual planet known as Goloka. There, surrounded by Sakhis, Srimati Radhika revels in the mellows of divine pastime. With great ecstasy, she expands the joy of loving sweetness in the service of Sri Krishna Chandra, who is otherwise served in 4 relationships up to parenthood. You, O Thakur Bhakti Vinod, can give us the service of that holy Dham. Sri Gauranu Matan Swarupa Viditam Rupa Garajend Adritam Rupadhyay Pariveshitam Raghu Ganaya Ashwaditam Sevitam Jivadya Abhirakshitam Shukha Shiva Brahmadi Samanitam Sri Radha Pada Sevanamritam Aho Tad Datam Isho Bhavan. The internal purport is known to Sri Sarup Damodar by the sanction of Sri Gaurachandra. Of that which is adored by Sri Sanatan Goswami and distributed by the preceptors realized in transcendental mellows, headed by Sri Rupa Goswami, that which is tasted and enhanced by Sri Raghunath Das Goswami and followers, and carefully protected by the votaries headed by Sri Jiva Prabhu, and that which from a respectful distance is venerated by great personalities such as Sri Shuka, Lord Shiva, and the chief of the demigods and Lord Brahma, the grandfather of all beings. O wonder of wonder, the nectarian rapture of servitude unto Sri Radhika, that too you can give us. Kwaham mandamatistva attiva patita, kwatam jagat pavanaha, bo swamin kripaya paradha nichayo, nunam tvaya kamyatam, yachehang karunanidhe, varamimam padabja mule bhavat, sarvashva vadhi radhika doita dasanam, gane ganyatam. Where am I, so lowly and fallen? And where are you, the great soul who delivers the universe? O Lord, by your grace, you are sure to forgive my offenses. O ocean of mercy, in the dust of your lotus feet, I pray for just this benediction. Kindly make my life successful by recommending me for admission into the group of Sri Barsha Banabi Doyita Das, who is the dearmost one in your heart. Barsha Banabi Doyita Das means Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The translator's note says the preceding prayer to Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who was born in 1838 and passed away in 1914, the pioneer of pure devotion in the recent age, was composed within the lifetime of the author's guru Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Goswami Prabhupada. Upon reading the original Sanskrit verse, Srila Prabhupada commented, "Now I am confident that we have one man who is qualified to uphold the standard of our sampradaya, or divine succession." So this is we see that Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, after he was posted to Puri, some inspiration came to him that he wanted to go closer to Gaura-mandala in Bengal, the place of Lord Chaitanya's appearance and pastimes. And so he requested a transfer to Krishnagar. Krishnagar is a small town which is in Gaura-mandala. On one side is Surabhikunj, and on the other side is Navadvip. So it's like the town, intersecting town there. So he was given the position of chief magistrate there, and moved there with his family. And there he got the vision of the Yoga Pit, the place where Lord Chaitanya appeared. While before moving, he was visiting there, standing on the roof of what was known as the Rani Dharmshala, which was like a kind of pilgrim hotel. Standing on the roof there with one of his sons, Kamala Prasad, he had a vision of the Adbhut Mandir, or the great temple, spoken about by Srila Jiva Goswami, and he knew that was the place of Sri Chaitanya's appearance. So he went there. Subsequently, went there and was searching the local records, and found in the records some place there which was called Mayapur in ancient times, but wasn't known as that in present times. So he went there and he asked the local people, who were mainly Muslim farmers, like, what is this place? And they say, oh, we are farming here, but there's one area of land that's completely useless. Nothing grows there except tulsi. We've tried to plant many other crops and so many things there, but nothing at all will grow. But tulsi, the tulsi plant flourishes there for some unknown reason. And of course tulsi is nothing very much to them, but they know what is tulsi. This is tulsi. So then, armed with that, he went there and he felt the inspiration that this must be the place where Lord Chaitanya appeared. But although he was a great Vaishnava saint, he didn't trust his own conclusion on that. So he wanted to bring someone who he considered to be of, someone with some standing in devotion. So in Vrindavan was a very famous saint there, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur went there and told him, I think I have found the place of the birth of Chaitanya Dev. Please you come and tell me if my inspiration is right or not. So when at that time Jagannath Babaji was very elderly, so elderly that he couldn't walk, and one of his disciples would carry him in a basket on his back wherever he would go. So then Bhakti Vinod Thakur bought him with his, he's not in the basket on the back, showed him the place, and when he saw that place, he jumped from the basket and danced there, shouting, yes, this is the place where Prabhu appeared, means our master appeared. So then it was excavated and the temple gradually was built there. And during the excavation they found a deity of Purushottam deity, which by all accounts was the deity worshipped, the family deity of Jagannath Mishra, the father of Lord Chaitanya. So that was installed there. and the modern yoga pit as it is today, with the neem tree and so on there. So he showed that to the world. He revealed that to the world, and from that grew the Gaudiya mission. So at that time, when the temple was established, there wasn't even any proper roads going there or anything. So, and it was very dangerous at that time. That time there were still tigers roaming around in the forest there in Bengal, and there was a lot of dacoits, or what would you say, robbers, bandits in that area. So it was very difficult to get anybody to stay in the temple to do the worship there. So he had to pay priests to stay there in the temple. Not only did he have to pay the priest, but we also heard that he would roll ganja with his own hands, and they would for the priests, so just so that they would stay in the area.
So the temple was made in the time of Bhakti Vinod Thakur.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
So that's why Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur said, if we have to provide meat, if they start chanting.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Isn't it?
And we see that at the opening of the Chaitanya Mott, the then governor of Bengal, whose name was Anderson, John Anderson, I think it was. And anyway, he was invited there, and they had a hotel in Calcutta cater for him and his party. Whatever it was that they ate, but generally meat. But the governor, John Anderson, was so impressed by Saraswat Thakur that he only took prasadam when he was there. He wouldn't take the other food that had been bought for him and his party. So anyway, that was a little kind of historical thing, but so many books Bhakti Vinod Thakur wrote. The list is voluminous, but the first book that he wrote in English was a very small book called The Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya, or Sri Chaitanya, The Life and Precepts of Sri Chaitanya, small booklet, and subsequently that was sent all over the world. The American Library of Congress, the British Museum Library, and so many different important libraries around the world have that book. It was also sent to Henry Thoreau and Walt Emerson, and so many different thinkers in those days. So that was you can say the first idea of preaching the Krishna conception in the English-speaking world. And that, of course, continued with Saraswat Thakur. Saraswat Thakur himself, Bhakti Vinod Thakur's son, who Bhakti Vinod Thakur prayed for a son that would spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And Saraswat Thakur was born while they lived in Puri, next to the Jagannath Mandir, and many auspicious signs at the time of his birth. And he began to spread that all around the world. And he was very much dedicated to Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He said, Guru Maharaj said, 14 children, but out of those 14, only 2 were actually really interested in Krishna consciousness. And of the 2, one of them was a Sahajya. So that was Lalit Prasad Thakur, his older brother. And Saraswat Thakur said that the difference between him and I was that I saw Bhakti Vinod Thakur as Radha, and he saw Bhakti Vinod Thakur as Baba. meaning like his father. But I saw him as Radha or Sri Guru. So, and we see in the establishment of the Gaudiya Math, the deities were like Radha Vinod and Vinod Bihari, and all with the different names of Vinod. One of Saraswati Thakur's first disciples, who later became Parvat Maharaj, when he was a boy, he lived in the house next door to Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And he said that every morning at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, Bhakti Vinod Thakur would go out into his garden and chant on his rosary. And there was also like a concrete bench there in the garden, and when sometimes he would walk, sometimes he would sit in the bench. He said, but when I heard his chanting, that it was not like our chanting, let's say. It wasn't like our chanting. He said it was just like somebody calling for their beloved, like in separation from their beloved, their mother or their lover or whatever, calling in that way. And you can think, if your next door neighbor is Bhakti Vinod Thakur, there's a pretty good chance that you'll grow up as a devotee of the Lord, which he did, and he joined the mission of Saraswati Thakur and became Bharati Maharaj. So some years, in the time of Srila Govinda Maharaj, he asked me to take over as the editor of Gaudiya Darshan, which is the publication of our mission. And I did that, but I only was able to produce 4 issues. Not very good, really. But actually it was because I thought that I would get much more support than I did from devotees around the world contributing our articles and finance and so on, but it didn't really happen. But anyway, the 4 that I did produce, they were appreciated by Srila Gurudev. And in one of them, maybe the second one, let me see, or the first or second, let me see, which one is it? Yes. In the first issue that I published, and Srila Govinda Maharaj told me, you have to publish these particular articles that were in the original. So this was the cover of it, if you remember. We might have a few around the temple still. And Guru Maharaj asked me to publish the original article written by Srila Sridhar Maharaj called Gaudiya Darshan, a brief introduction, which was given to me by Srila Gurudev on a DVD-ROM, the article, but the article was in Bengali, and I don't know Bengali, honestly, so I had to find somebody to translate that for me. Anyway, I did find a good translator, and they translated that, and other things that were in English. But one lecture, or not a lecture, sorry, an article written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and published in their Gaudiya Math magazine, which was called the Gaudiya. No, the Harmonist. They were different. There were actually 3. But this was the Harmonist, which was started by Bhakti Vinod Thakur originally. And this was published in English, this article, which is called Thakur Bhakti Vinod. So it's about Bhakti Vinod Thakur by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It was originally published in the Harmonist magazine in December of 1931. So we avail ourselves of the opportunity offered by the anniversary celebrations of the advent of Thakur Bhakti Vinod to reflect on the right method of obtaining those benefits that have been made accessible to humanity by the grace of this great devotee of Krishna. Thakur Bhakti Vinod has been specifically kind to those unfortunate persons who are engrossed in mental speculation of all kinds. This is the prevalent malady of the present age. The other acharyas who appeared before Thakur Bhakti Vinod did not address their discourses so directly to the empiric thinkers. They had been more merciful to those who are naturally disposed to listen to discourses on the Absolute without being dissuaded by the specious arguments of avowed opponents of Godhead. Srila Thakur Bhaktivinoda has taken the trouble of meeting the perverse arguments of mental speculators by the superior transcendental logic of the absolute truth. It is thus possible for the average modern readers to profit by the perusal of his writings. That day is not far distant when the priceless volumes penned by Thakur Bhaktivinoda will be reverently translated by the recipients of his grace into all the languages of the world. The writings of Thakur Bhaktivinoda provide the golden bridge by which the mental speculator can safely cross the raging waters of fruitless empiric controversies that trouble the peace of those who choose to trust in their guidance for finding the truth. As soon as the sympathetic reader is in a position to appreciate the sterling quality of Thakur Bhaktivinoda's philosophy, the entire vista of the revealed literatures of the world will automatically open out to his reclaimed vision. There have, however, already arisen serious misunderstandings regarding the proper interpretation of the life and teachings of Srila Thakur Bhaktivinoda. Those who suppose they understand the meaning of his message without securing the guiding grace of the Acharya are disposed to unduly favor the methods of empiric study of his writings. There are persons who have got by heart almost everything that he wrote without being able to catch the least particle of his meaning. Such study cannot benefit those who are not prepared to act up to the instructions lucidly conveyed by his words. There is no honest chance of missing the warnings of Thakur Bhaktivinoda. Those, therefore, who are misled by the perusal of his writings are led astray by their own obstinate perversity in sticking to the empiric course, which they prefer to cherish against his explicit warnings. Let these unfortunate persons look more carefully into their own hearts for the cause of their misfortunes. The personal service of the pure devotee is essential for understanding the spiritual meaning of the words of Thakur Bhaktivinoda. The editor of this journal, originally started by Thakur Bhaktivinoda, has been trying to draw the attention of all followers of Thakur Bhaktivinoda to this all-important point of his teachings. It is not necessary to try to place ourselves on a footing of equality with Thakur Bhaktivinoda. We are not likely to benefit by any mechanical imitation of any practices of Thakur Bhaktivinoda on the opportunist principle that they may be convenient for us to adopt. The Guru is not an erring mortal whose activities can be understood by the fallible reason of unreclaimed humanity. There is an eternally impassable line of demarcation between the Saviour and the saved. Those who are really saved can alone know this. Thakur Bhaktivinoda belongs to the category of the spiritual world teachers who eternally occupy the superior position. The present editor has all along felt it his paramount duty to try to clear up the meaning of the life and teachings of Thakur Bhaktivinoda by the method of submissive listening to the transcendental sound from the lips of the pure devotee. The guru who realizes the transcendental meaning of all sounds is in a position to serve the Absolute by the direction of the Absolute conveyed through every sound. The transcendental sound is Godhead. The mundane sound is non-Godhead. All sound has got these opposite aptitudes. All sound reveals its divine face to the devotee and only presents its deluding aspect to the empiric pedant. The devotee talks apparently the same language as the deluded empiric pedant, who had got by heart the vocabulary of the scriptures, but notwithstanding apparent identity of performance, the one has no access to the reality, while the other is absolutely free from all delusion. Those who repeat the teachings of Thakur Bhakti Vinod from memory do not necessarily understand the meaning of the words they mechanically repeat. Those who can pass an empiric examination regarding the content of his writings are not necessarily also self-realized souls. They may not at all know the real meaning of the words they have learnt by the method of empiric study. Take, for example, the name Krishna. Every reader of Thakur Bhakti Vinod's works must be aware that the name manifests himself on the lips of his serving devotees, although he is inaccessible by our mundane senses. It is one thing to pass the examination by reproducing this true conclusion from the writings of Thakur Bhakti Vinod, and quite another matter to realize the nature of the holy name of Krishna by the process conveyed by the words. Thakur Bhakti Vinod did not want us to go to the clever mechanical reciter of the mundane sound for obtaining access to the transcendental name of Krishna. Such a person may be fully equipped with all the written arguments in explanation of the nature of the divine name. But if we listen to all these arguments from the dead source, the words will only increase our delusion. The very same words coming from the lips of the devotee will have the diametrically opposite effect. Our empiric judgment can never grasp the difference between the two performances. The devotee is always right. The non-devotee, in the shape of the empiric pedant, is always and necessarily wrong. In the one case, there is always present the substantive truth, and nothing but the substantive truth. In the other case, there is present the apparent or misleading hypothesis, and nothing but untruth. The wording may have the same external appearance in both cases. The identical verses of the scriptures may be recited by the devotee and the non-devotee, may be apparently misquoted by the non-devotee, but the corresponding values of the two processes remain always categorically different. The devotee is right even when he apparently misquotes. The non-devotee is wrong even when he quotes correctly the very words, chapter and verse of the scriptures. It is not empiric wisdom that is the object of quest of the devotee. Those who read the scriptures for gathering empiric wisdom will be pursuing the wild goose chase. There are not a few dupes of their empiric scriptural erudition. These dupes have their admiring under-dupes, but the mutual admiration society of dupes does not escape by the mere weight of their numbers. The misfortunes due to the deliberate pursuit of the wrong course in accordance with the suggestions of our lower selves. What are the scriptures? They are nothing but the record by the pure devotee of the divine message appearing on the lips of the pure devotees. The message conveyed by the devotees is the same in all ages. The words of the devotees are never identical with the scriptures, are ever identical with the scriptures. Any meaning of the scriptures that belittles the function of the devotee, who is the original communicant of the divine message, contradicts its own claim to be heard. Those who think that the Sanskrit language is the lexicographical sense, is the language of the divinity, are as deluded as those who hold that the divine message is communicable through any other spoken dialects. All languages simultaneously express and hide the absolute. The mundane face of all languages hides the truth. The transcendental face of all sound expresses nothing but the absolute. The pure devotee is the speaker of the transcendental language. The transcendental sound makes his appearance on the lips of his pure devotee. This is the direct, unambiguous appearance of divinity. On the lips of non-devotees, the absolute always appears in his deluding aspect. To the pure devotee, the absolute reveals himself under all circumstances. To the conditioned soul, if he is disposed to listen in a truly submissive spirit, the language of the pure devotee can alone impart the knowledge of the absolute. The conditioned soul mistakes the deluding for the real aspect when he chooses to lend his ear to the non-devotee. This is the reason why the conditioned soul is warned to avoid all association with non-devotees. Thakur Bhaktivinoda is acknowledged by all his sincere followers as possessing the above powers of the pure devotee of Godhead. His words have to be received from the lips of a pure devotee. If his words are listened from the lips of a non-devotee, they will certainly deceive. If his works are studied in the light of one's own worldly experience, their meaning will refuse to disclose itself to such readers. His works belong to the class of eternal revealed literature of the world and must be approached for their right understanding through their exposition by the pure devotee. If no help from the pure devotee is sought, the words of Thakur Bhaktivinoda will be grossly misunderstood by their readers. The attentive reader of those works will find that he is always directed to throw himself upon the mercy of the pure devotee if he is not to remain unwarrantably self-satisfied by the deluding results of his wrong method of study. The writings of Thakur Bhaktivinoda are valuable because they demolish all empiric objections against accepting the only method of approaching the Absolute in the right way. They cannot and were never intended to give access to the Absolute without help from the pure devotee of Krishna. They direct the sincere inquirer of the truth, as all the revealed scriptures do, to the pure devotees of Krishna to learn about him by submitting to listen with an open mind to the transcendental sound appearing on his lips. Before we open any of the books penned by Thakur Bhaktivinoda, we should do well to reflect a little on the attitude with which, as the indispensable prerequisite to approach its study, it is by neglecting to remember this fundamental principle that the empiric pedants find themselves so hopelessly puzzled in their vain endeavor to reconcile the statements of the different texts of the scriptures. The same difficulty is already in process of overtaking many of the so-called followers of Thakur Bhaktivinoda, and for the same reason. The person to whom the Acharya is pleased to transmit his power is alone in a position to convey the divine message. This constitutes the underlying principle of the line of succession of the spiritual teachers. The Acharya thus authorized has no other duty than that of delivering intact the message received from all his predecessors. There is no difference between the pronouncements of one Acharya and another. All of them are perfect mediums for the appearance of the divinity in the form of transcendental name, who is identical with his form, quality, activity, and paraphernalia. The divinity is absolute knowledge. Absolute knowledge has the character of indivisible unity. One particle of the absolute knowledge is capable of revealing all the potency of the divinity. Those who want to understand the contents of the volumes penned by the piecemeal acquisitive method applicable to deluding knowledge available to the mind on the mundane plane are bound to be self-deceived. Those who are sincere seekers of the truth are alone eligible to find him, in and through the proper method of his quest. In order to be put on the track of the Absolute, listening to the words of the pure devotee is absolutely necessary. The spoken word of the Absolute is the Absolute. It is only the Absolute who can give himself away to the constituents of his power. The Absolute appears to the listening ear of the conditioned soul in the form of the name on the lips of the sadhu. This is the key to the whole position. The words of Thakur Bhakti Vinod direct the empiric pedant to discard his wrong method and inclination on the threshold of the real quest of the Absolute. If the pedant still chooses to carry his errors into the realm of the Absolute Truth, he only marches by a deceptive bypath into the regions of darker ignorance by his arrogant study of the scriptures. The method offered by Thakur Bhakti Vinod is identical with the object of the quest. The method is not really grasped except by the grace of the pure devotee. The arguments indeed are these, but they can only corroborate, but can never be a substitute for the word from the living source of the truth, who is no other than the pure devotee of Krishna, the concrete personal Absolute. Thakur Bhaktivinod's greatest gift to the world consists in this, that he has brought about the appearance of those pure devotees who are, at present, carrying on the movement of unalloyed devotion to the feet of Sri Krishna by their own whole-time spiritual service of the divinity. The purity of the soul is only analogously describable by the resource of the mundane language. The highest ideal of empiric morality is no better than the grossest wickedness to the transcendental, perfect purity of the bona fide devotee of the Absolute. The word morality itself is a mischievous misnomer when it is applied to any quality of the conditioned soul. The hypocritical contentment with a negative attitude is part and parcel of the principle of undiluted immorality. Those who pretend to recognize the divine mission of Thakur Bhaktivinod without aspiring to the unconditional service of those pure souls who really follow the teachings of the Thakur by the method enjoined by the scriptures and explained by Thakur Bhaktivinod in a way that is so eminently suited to the requirements of the sophisticated mentality of the present age, only deceive themselves and their willing victims by their hypocritical professions and performances. These persons must not be confounded with the bona fide members of the flock. Thakur Bhaktivinod has predicted the consummation of religious unity of the world by the appearance of the only universal church which bears the eternal designation of the Brahma Sampradaya. He has given mankind the blessed assurance that all theistic churches will shortly merge in the one eternal spiritual community by the grace of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. The spiritual community is not circumscribed by the conditions of time and space, race and nationality. Mankind had been looking forward to this far-off divine event through the long ages. Thakur Bhaktivinod has made the conception available in its practicable spiritual form to the open-minded empiricist who is prepared to undergo the process of enlightenment. The keystone of the arch has been laid, which will afford the needed shelter to all awakened animation under its ample encircling arms. Those who would thoughtlessly allow their hollow pride of race, pseudo-knowledge or pseudo-virtue to stand in the way of this long-hoped-for consummation would have to thank only themselves for not being incorporated in the spiritual society of all pure souls. These plain words need not be misrepresented. by arrogant persons who are full of the vanity of empiric ignorance, as the pronouncements of aggressive sectarianism. The aggressive pronouncement of the concrete truth is the crying necessity of the moment for silencing the aggressive propaganda of specific untruth that is being carried on all over the world by the preachers of empiric contrivances for the amelioration of the hard lot of conditioned souls. The empiric propaganda clothes itself in the language of negative abstraction for deluding those who are engrossed in the selfish pursuit of worldly enjoyment.